The weak light of the hazy morning filtered through the gaps in the window blinds, casting a soft glow into the silent room. Alex Turner glanced at the watch on his wrist, feeling the weight of time passing slowly. He had woken up early, like every other day, preparing for another workday ahead. But today, there was something different in the air, something subtle but undeniable, that made him feel unsettled. Lily, his wife, had left the house early, as usual, but today there was something off. He had kissed her on the forehead as she left, a simple gesture that never made him question anything before. But this time, when he looked into her eyes, there was something unfamiliar, an invisible distance that made Alex stop and think. She didn't say anything more, just offered a forced smile, then climbed into her sleek sports car. Unlike every other day, Lily didn't turn back to wish him a good day. No kind words, no gentle gaze that he had grown accustomed to. And as the car door slammed shut, that unsettling feeling deepened inside him. He tried to shake off the thought and started his work. He was used to spending his days juggling both the company and his family, but today, everything felt off, as if some strange presence was hanging in the air. Hours passed, and while work progressed smoothly, a vague unease gnawed at him. As the light dimmed into the afternoon, he couldn't help but think of the strange call he received earlier that day. A short message, "She's not where she said she was." That was all it said. Alex dialed the number of his close friend, David Mitchell, a lawyer he had known for years. He couldn't shake the strange feeling after receiving such unsettling news. He had never felt so anxious. David's voice was light-hearted at first, but he quickly picked up on the change in Alex's tone. "What's going on?" David asked. "Lily, she's not telling me everything," Alex replied, pausing, unsure if he could even express the weight of his growing suspicion. Later that evening, when Lily returned, Alex couldn't keep his composure. She entered the room, but there was no familiar, affectionate glance he had expected. Instead, she seemed hurried, her eyes skimming over Alex indifferently. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice cold, lacking any warmth. Alex stood there, feeling the space between them grow suffocating. "Where did you go today?" he asked, his voice lowering, almost like a warning. Lily paused, but only for a brief moment. She turned back, her face momentarily showing a flash of panic, but she quickly masked it. "Why? You don't trust me?" Lily replied with a shrug, but there was something clearly wrong. Alex didn't answer right away. He just stood there, staring at her, and in that moment, he felt everything unravel inside him. Why her? Why Lily, the woman he had loved for 14 years? The question echoed endlessly in his mind, with no answer. Lily looked at him, seemingly realizing something in his gaze. "What are you thinking?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. Alex could no longer contain his emotions. He stepped forward, pulled the phone from his jacket pocket, and handed it to her. On the screen were messages she couldn't deny. "Can you explain this?" Alex asked, his voice now firm and steady. Lily's eyes widened for a moment before she lowered her head, as if a shell had cracked open. "You don't understand," she whispered, but Alex couldn't hear her anymore. Everything inside him felt like it was crumbling. The feeling of betrayal, the one he never imagined experiencing, was now stark and real in front of him. The truth he didn't want to face had arrived, and there was no turning back. Alex stood motionless, staring at Lily, but in his mind, everything had turned into chaos. The messages, her words, all felt like pieces of a puzzle shattered beyond repair. He had once believed their love was unbreakable, but now, in front of him, all of it was a lie. It felt like a storm had hit his mind, sweeping away all the beautiful memories he had built over the years. But Alex wasn't one to give up easily. He took a deep breath, trying to calm himself, but the images of their past kept spinning in his head. He remembered the first days when he met Lily. They were both students, young, full of passion. She was different then, a beautiful, confident girl with big dreams, but also someone who was very sincere. They had gone through tough times together, sharing hopes for a brighter future. Alex loved her not just for her looks, but for her intelligence and the way she made a lasting impression on everyone she met. After graduating, everything seemed to fall into place. They married after 3 years of dating, and life seemed perfect. Stable careers, 2 wonderful children, everything according to the plan they had set for themselves. But little changes started creeping in a few years later when Lily got promoted at work. That rapid success started to change her. Her business trips became more frequent, and social events with colleagues became routine. She began boasting about achievements that Alex didn't fully understand, talking about meetings and major deals she was involved in, and that made Alex happy for her. But it was during the late nights she came home, when there were no more words of encouragement or affection, that their bond slowly began to fade. Lily began to change in subtle ways, from their short conversations to her shift in perspective on family. Their relationship had long become distant, and Alex didn't realize it until it was too late. He started feeling like a secondary part of Lily's life. The late nights she came home, the coldness in her hug, and the empty conversations were no longer hidden. But Alex still believed in her love, because he didn't want to believe that a woman who had cared for their family and loved him with all her heart could change so drastically. When Alex finally decided to face the truth, he couldn't have predicted that it all started right there in the company where Lily worked. Her boss, Victor Bellamy, had long been more than just a colleague. Victor was a powerful, charismatic man with an undeniable charm. Their relationship started with business meetings, then slowly moved into dinners after work. Over time, their private conversations mixed with flirtation, eventually turning into secret meetings. The signs had been there, but Alex hadn't seen them. He was too busy with work, too wrapped up in his own responsibilities, to notice the growing distance between them. But when he finally decided to confront the truth, he found out that everything had already been set in motion. The man who had now taken his place in Lily's life wasn't just any colleague. He was someone who had been close to her for much longer than Alex had known. Alex didn't realize it at first. He was so caught up in his work and responsibilities as a father and husband that he overlooked the subtle changes in Lily. But when he started noticing the odd signs in their relationship, he didn't want to believe it could be betrayal. He wondered if he had been so consumed by his career that he had missed all the shifts in their family life. But no matter how he thought about it, the truth remained unchanged. Lily had fallen out of love. As Alex began to follow her, he uncovered more than just secret phone calls. He discovered her mysterious business trips she had hidden from him. The nights she didn't come home, the trips with unclear reasons, everything had an explanation that Alex wasn't ready to face. When the suspicious messages between Lily and Victor appeared on her phone screen, Alex could no longer hold back. He stood there, speechless, staring into his wife's eyes, searching for some sign of truth in her gaze. Lily no longer had the courage to deny it. She looked into Alex's eyes, her expression vacant, and couldn't find the words to justify herself. "Why?" Alex asked, his voice trembling, not from fear, but from the crushing pain he was experiencing. Lily fell silent, lowering her head, unable to face him. That was the decisive moment. A question echoed in Alex's mind, why me? But there was no answer. All he could do in that moment was stand there, looking at Lily, and feel a loss greater than death itself. The cold evening breeze blew through the window, but Alex didn't feel the chill. He sat motionless, not speaking a word, as if time had stopped in that moment. Lily stood before him, still holding her phone, but now it didn't matter anymore. Everything around him seemed to disappear, leaving only the growing pain and anger inside him. Alex had tried to control himself, but he couldn't. This betrayal, undeniable, had torn apart everything he had built over the past 14 years. Lily looked at him, not knowing what to say, standing there like a stranger, her eyes filled with confusion. She was no longer the wife Alex had loved, no longer the one he had shared the sweet moments of life with. That feeling suddenly flooded him, like a ghost he couldn't shake off. Alex took a deep breath, trying to focus, but his mind was foggy, and all he could hear was the voice in his head asking, "Why? You can't do this to me, Lily." His voice was soft, but each word cut like a knife. "You just can't." Lily slowly lifted her gaze, the exhaustion clear in her eyes. I don't know what to say to you anymore," she sighed, her voice hoarse. "You don't see me anymore, Alex. You don't even recognize me." Alex couldn't stop the rage in his heart. "I don't recognize you. What about you? Who do you see when you look at me? Do you even remember what we had?" Each question struck like a hammer to her heart. Lily took a step back, tears running down her cheeks. "I didn't want to hurt you, I really didn't, but there are things I couldn't control. I feel lost in my own life. I can't just keep playing the role of a good wife, a good mother, without having something for myself." She paused, her breath quickening. "Victor made me feel alive again, made me feel seen. I don't know where to start." Alex was struck with an intense shock, but what Lily just said cut deeper than anything. It wasn't his fault, but he had missed the signs all along, and now it was too late. She was no longer the Lily he knew, no longer the one who had gone through so much hardship and triumphs with him. Their relationship, no matter how strong, had been shattered by such a profound, sudden change that he couldn't control. Alex stood up, feeling the air around him grow heavier. "So, you found something in Victor that you couldn't find in me? Attention? Affection? Or something else I couldn't give you?" His voice cracked, and every emotion surged to the surface. Lily couldn't face him anymore. She turned away, taking a deep breath, and then softly replied, "You don't understand. I didn't do this for you, and it's not about us. I just wanted to be myself, to feel like I still exist outside of being Alex's wife." Alex turned back, his gaze filled with fury. "So, you don't need me anymore? You want me out of your life just because of someone else? All that we've built, all this family, it doesn't matter to you anymore?" Lily turned back, her eyes betraying the pain she couldn't hide. "I can't say what you want to hear. You always thought I was just a good wife, but I have my own feelings. I can't live my whole life in a marriage where I feel like a shadow. And Victor, he sees me, Alex. He makes me feel like I'm not invisible." Alex stared at her, the anger building inside him. But beneath that anger, something else was rising, deep hurt, betrayal, and the realization that everything he thought was real had been crumbling for far longer than he had ever known. A heavy silence hung in the air, the only sound being the sharp breaths of both of them. Alex stood frozen, his heart breaking piece by piece. He had seen the signs of change, but he never thought she would betray him. The painful truth hit him like a slap to the face. What for? What was the point? He didn't know anymore. All he knew was that everything he had worked so hard to protect, to preserve, was now reduced to rubble. Lily stepped forward, her trembling hands reaching for Alex's, but he didn't respond. "Can you understand me?" she asked quietly. "I never wanted to hurt you, but I feel like I'm losing myself in this marriage. I can love you, but I can't love the life I'm living anymore." Lily's voice was soft, as if she herself could no longer recognize who she had become. Alex looked into her eyes, realizing that the woman he had loved, the wife he thought would be by his side for the rest of his life, had changed too much. Everything seemed to shatter before his eyes. Part of him didn't want to believe it, but the other part knew that the truth was undeniable. The cost of betrayal, the cost of forgetting the past, was now something he had to face alone. He walked out of the room, feeling like he wasn't even himself anymore. The questions echoed in his mind, but no answer was enough to bring him peace. When had they lost each other? Perhaps he didn't even know anymore. Alex couldn't figure out what to do next. Every step he took felt heavier, as though the ground beneath his feet was slowly turning to mud. He walked out of the room without saying a word, leaving Lily standing there, her eyes red and tears silently streaming down her face. Everything they had built seemed to vanish in an instant, irreparable. He left the house, not knowing where to go, but only needing to walk, as if putting one foot in front of the other would help him temporarily forget the agony that was tearing at his soul. The suffocating air in the house felt like it was closing in on him. Every glance, every memory that once seemed so beautiful now pierced his heart like a sharp blade. Alex didn't even remember where he drove. All he knew was that he ended up stopping in front of a quiet cafe. The evening wind blew cold through the cracks in the door. He stepped inside, finding a dark corner, staring blankly at the cold, untouched cup of coffee in front of him. He didn't want to think about what had just happened, but the image of Lily, her angry eyes, and the words she had said kept swirling in his mind. He couldn't escape it. Suddenly, his phone buzzed. A message. He didn't need to open it to know who it was from. The familiar name, Victor Bellamy, the man who had replaced him in Lily's eyes, flashed on the screen. Inside Alex, there was nothing left but a boiling rage. He opened the message. He knows, Alex. Lily is no longer yours. The name Victor stung like salt in an open wound. Alex slammed his hand on the table, making the coffee cup shatter. His mind spun, thoughts tangled in a whirlwind. Alex took a deep breath, trying to regain control. He couldn't let everything fall apart like this. At that moment, he made a decision. He had to face Victor, not to seek answers, but to make it clear that he wouldn't stand by and watch everything he had built slip away. His heart burned with fury, but there was also a fierce determination rising within him. Alex stood up, walked out of the cafe, got in his car, and drove straight to Victor's company. Each mile felt longer, the distance from his home a physical manifestation of the emotional chasm between him and Lily. When he arrived, the neon lights of the building illuminated his face, reflecting the exhaustion, the tension, and the anger. He walked into the building without hesitation, resolute to confront Victor. When Alex reached Victor's office, he didn't knock. Everything else seemed pointless. He opened the door and stepped inside. Victor was sitting behind his desk, his eyes cold as he looked up at Alex. "What are you doing here?" Victor asked, not the least bit surprised. For him, perhaps, everything had already been made clear. Alex walked in, his gaze fixed on Victor. "I'm here to take back what's mine. Don't think you can just steal everything I've worked for." Victor looked at Alex, a mocking smile curling at his lips. "You've lost, Alex. Lily is mine. You have nothing left to say." The fury inside Alex clouded his judgment. He strode forward, grabbing Victor by the collar. "I won't let you destroy everything," he growled, his voice hoarse. But Victor wasn't scared. He smiled, offering no resistance, and gently removed Alex's hands from his shirt. "Sorry, Alex. But that's the truth." "She's made her choice," Victor said, his eyes full of challenge. Alex paused, his hands clenched so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "I don't need to hear your explanation. I just want to say this: no one, not even you, has the right to shatter my life." The two men stood there for a moment, each with their own unspoken understanding of the consequences of their actions. Alex had no more words left. The truth was undeniable, and Victor's role in it was clear. This fight, however, was far from over. Their gazes met in a long, lingering moment, and Alex realized everything had ended. But no, he couldn't let it happen. The feeling surged within him, a fierce anger that was impossible to suppress. He had lost Lily, he knew, but he couldn't let Victor win. "You will never find peace, Victor," Alex said, his voice hard, no trace of weakness left. Victor stood, facing Alex. "If you really want to protect something, I'd suggest you start with Lily. As for me, I already have her." Alex turned on his heel and walked out of the room without saying another word. His mind was empty, consumed by pain and fury. He knew this fight wasn't over, but at least he had faced Victor, even if he had failed to keep the woman he loved. As he stepped into the elevator, Alex was no longer the man he used to be. He had changed. And though it would hurt even more, he wouldn't give up. He knew he had to move on, had to take back what was lost, even if it was just a glimmer of hope left. Alex drove home in silence. Every sound, every emotion felt smothered, trapped inside his chest. The dark night stretched on, streetlights casting distorted reflections of the past on the windshield, of Lily, of Victor, and everything he had lost. He had faced Victor, had said everything he needed to, but inside, he still felt hollow. He didn't know what he had left to fight for. Maybe all he could do now was start over, though he wasn't sure where to begin. When he arrived home, the house felt eerily quiet, as if no one had lived there for years. Alex stepped inside, glancing around, feeling every wall, every chair, every table remind him of the happy days that now seemed so distant. He felt as though he were standing amidst ruins, as if nothing could ever be saved. He walked into the bedroom, where memories of Lily still lingered. Everything felt foreign now, as if she were no longer a part of his life. He sat down on the bed, placing his hand on the pillow, sighing deeply. He didn't know what to do next. He had tried, he had poured his heart into this family, but everything had collapsed before him. The sense of betrayal, of abandonment, swept over him like a wave, washing away all hope. But just as he thought he couldn't take it anymore, a thought flickered in his mind: he couldn't let his life fall apart completely. No matter what, he had to keep going. The next morning, when the sunlight streamed through the window, Alex woke up feeling less drained than the night before. He knew what he had to do. He had to take back control of his life. He couldn't keep letting the mistakes of the past haunt him. He wouldn't let Lily, or Victor, or anyone keep him living in darkness forever. Alex reached out to a lawyer, someone he had known for years. David Mitchell, an old friend, now his lawyer through the divorce process. Their conversation was brief but enough for Alex to make his decision. "You want a divorce, don't you?" David asked, looking at Alex with sympathy. "Yes," Alex replied, his voice no longer filled with helplessness. "I can't keep living in a lie. I won't let Lily, or Victor, destroy my life." David nodded. "All right, I'll help you move forward with the divorce process. But remember, the most important thing right now is to get your life back. Don't let anyone make you forget your own worth." Alex sat quietly, listening to David's words, and a strange feeling began to spread within him. It was as if a small flame had been lit in the darkness, slowly growing brighter. He wasn't a victim. He wasn't weak. He could stand up, rebuild everything from scratch. As the divorce proceedings began, Alex realized this wasn't the end, it was a new beginning. The dark days were behind him, and now, he was stepping into a new chapter of his life. He started to find himself again, focusing on his work, taking care of his children. The small moments in life, the dinners with his family, the afternoons spent taking his kids out, became precious memories he had missed before. Time passed, and Alex realized he was stronger. And though he had lost a part of his life, he had no regrets. Just like any wound, no matter how deep, it would heal with time. And when it did, those old wounds would no longer define him. A year later, Alex's life began to stabilize. His children, Sophie and Ethan, were growing older, and he was working with a new sense of purpose. He knew life wouldn't be easy, but he had learned how to stand firm, how not to let the past determine his future. One autumn afternoon, as he sat at a familiar cafe, his gaze met that of a woman sitting across from him. She smiled, and he felt something familiar in that glance. Rhonda Carson. A single mother he had met through the community meetings. They had spoken a few times before, but today, when she looked at him, there was something in her gaze that made Alex's heart stir. Rhonda wasn't like Lily. She wasn't loud, or calculating. She was simple, gentle, and knew how to make those around her feel at ease. They talked, and Alex realized that maybe he was ready to open his heart again. Facing Rhonda, he felt a spark of hope, that maybe his life could still find new joys, even though the past would always linger. He didn't know what the future would hold, but for the first time in a long while, he had learned to love himself. And maybe, one day, he would love someone else again. But for now, he knew he just had to live each day, cherish what he had, because no matter how harsh life could be, he knew he could stand tall. And that, for now, was all that mattered.